Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Father Son Packers podcast, your source for Packers news, notes, and analysis. My name is Matt. I will be your host for the evening because Tommy is in the Big Apple on vacation. This is a special edition of Father Son Packers podcast, the uncle nephew version. Subbing in for Tommy is his cousin Eli. Eli, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. So when Tommy recorded a solo episode earlier this season, I was a little disappointed I got the snub, but I was happy when Matt reached out to me for doing this week.
Yep, and I was telling Tommy, I was like, and I'll be your host for this evening. I said that kind of sounds like I don't know if any of you have been in the Disney Haunted Mansion ride, the opening monologue of the ride.
or
I'm kind of
Ghostbusters. You seem more like a game show host.
they're usually kind of stiff. So, well, I've been a scientist. Now I'll be a game show host. Sounds good. So, not too much in the way of news this week. The Packers cut running back James Robinson from the practice squad and signed running back Ellis Merriweather, a rookie from UMass, to the practice squad.
So
Um,
Merriweather played a couple preseason games for the Saints. The Saints fandom was gearing up. They were calling him Pierre Thomas 2.0. They said he had flashes of Adrian Peterson. So maybe it's exciting that we got him on our practice squad, but I think if either of those things were true, he would still be a Saint. So we'll see how it turns out.
oh, the Saints, we don't need anybody as good as that. Adrian Peterson, I did hear somebody say they knew that they liked his play in college anyway. I heard on some podcast. I can't remember who said that. But yeah, we'll see. I think I was also thinking that after it was like right after Emmanuel Wilson's like whatever 40 yards and a couple of carries in the last game. It's like, you know what? We can move on.
Yep. Yeah.
But so moving on to the injury report, it is extensive. Um, for the Steelers, they are going to be down two starters. The big one being Minkah Fitzpatrick, their starting safety, who has really been a stalwart on their defense since he came there from I think it was the Miami Dolphins, and they'll also be down former Packer third round pick, I think, Montravius Adams, or maybe he was even earlier, who's currently second on the Steelers in defensive line snaps. Now, those snaps might be taken up by Cam Hayward, who's been coming back from injury, who is a much better player, actually, and rookie was from Wisconsin, I believe, Keanu Benton. And they both actually, so Benton and Hayward both set like season high in snaps last week when Adams got hurt. Now, for the Packers, it's a much more concerning pile of injuries. First, there's nobody ruled out. However, Jair Alexander and Quay Walker are both doubtful to play after having a DNP in every single practice this week. And for Alexander, it wasn't even the back injury that was bothering him before that kept him out for a couple of games. It's a new shoulder injury that I guess happened some point during the game against the Rams. And Quay Walker, I think it's the same injury that the groin injury that made him miss the last game that popped up in the middle of practice.
Did Jair come out early against the Rams, or did he play the full game?
I think he played the full game. I mean, I don't know if they pulled him out for a few snaps at the end, kind of like what they did with Jenkins and when they put Sean Ryan back in for a second stint near the end of the game. But I'm not sure. I'd have to look up what the snap counts were. I could pull that up if you're wondering. Or if you want to look that up, let's see. I can give that a quick. Well, why don't I'll move on instead of rummaging around. But we also have a couple of questionable players as well. Kenny Clark, who got the shoulder injury in the last game, and Rudy Ford, who missed the last game. They're questionable. And then we have three starting offensive linemen who are also questionable. Josh Myers, Josh Nyman, and John Runyon, all of whom started the last game. So that's less than ideal,
Yeah, and
seeing as
this is a
we're
matchup where we're going to want our best offensive lineman. This is going to be a tough one with a couple folks out.
yeah. So that's the I think the most worrisome part about the whole thing is how they're going to stand up. And the biggest question probably for the whole game is how the Packers going to stand up against the Steelers pass rush when they're on offense. And so that's, and if we're missing three starters on the offensive line, that is something to worry about. But we can, but I think, the one other thought I had about the injury report is that, so with Ford questionable, though he was able to practice a fair amount this week, maybe limited all week, I think. Um, yeah. So what did they do at safety? Last week, actually, with that kind of late fill in of Jonathan Owens and Anthony Johnson Jr. or AJJ, they did pretty well. Will they just, even if Ford is available, will they kind of stick to the plan or not?
Yeah, I so last week the tough thing to compare to is, it is a little bit easier to do well when you are playing against Brett Ripien as opposed to Matt Stafford. So did they hold up like PFF wise in those
They
categories as
had
well?
they had pretty good PFF grades. I can actually tell you that pretty soon. I've got that up now. Yeah. Well, I guess Anthony Johnson Jr. was about average for his grade, and Jonathan Owens a little bit above average. So they did okay.
Yeah.
Um,
Against Kenny Pickett, average and a little bit above average might be plenty fine.
yes, yeah, I mean Pickett is better than Rippon, but it's not like we're going against Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen in this game.
Right, right.
But they do have some like the Rams, they have some good receivers.
Yes.
Um, so let's get on. Do you have anything more you wanted to add about the injury report, or shall we move on to our?
I think most of my concerns are from the injury report you're going to touch on later when you're talking about some of the strengths for the Steelers that we have to worry about.
Oh, and just for your information, what I looked up, it looks like Jair played a full complement of snaps in the last game.
Okay.
So whatever it was that popped up, if it popped up during the game, I don't think it got him off the field.
Mm-hmm. Something that a little bit of adrenaline might have covered up, but then
Yes,
got
yes.
sore after the fact.
Um, so quick facts: the game is going to be a start time is noon Central in Pittsburgh, where the Packers have not won since I think like 1970 when Bart Starr was the QB. Maybe he was like player coach. I'm not sure. The forecast is for a high in the upper 40s and partly sunny, so pretty good football conditions.
Yeah.
And last I checked, the Steelers are favored by 3 with an over/under line of 39 and an implied score of Steelers 21 to Packers 18, which, it might be the under on that one in terms of how many, at least for the first half. I'm not expecting a whole lot of points from either team.
Yeah. Yeah.
We could go on to the meat of the pod. And that's keeping it. What Tom likes called keeping up with the Joneses, and he's not talking about Aaron and Caleb. And he always says I couldn't keep up with either one of them unless I was in a car, and maybe a good one.
Yeah.
But coming in, the Steelers are 5-3, with all 5 of their wins coming by 1 score or less, and all 3 of their losses by double digits. Despite the winning record, the Steelers are actually outscored on the season. They only average 16.6 points on offense and give up 20.4 points per game on defense. And they're getting outgained like 100 yards per game. However, they are second in the NFL in turnover margin at +8, Green Bay, for comparison, is -2.
So I think that last point is the only thing that's keeping the Steelers out of what I'd like to call the fraud watch sponsored by the Minnesota Vikings from last year. So I don't think their 5-3 record is fraudulent, even though their games are close. To me, that feels like a pretty solid representation of how they're doing, considering how strong their defense is performing.
Yeah, and that's the strength of the team is the sort of the disruption. Though they are giving up, some yards, but they're able to make the big plays.
Mm-hmm.
Um, on offense overall by DVOA, they're 18th overall, little ahead of Green Bay's 21st ranking. 20, but they're only 21st in passing to Green Bay's 14th, and 22nd in rushing to Green Bay's 25th. So neither team is particularly good at running the football. Both in the bottom third of the league. On defense, however,
go ahead.
You want to talk about how, the defense?
I was gonna say for running the football, the Steelers have a slightly more mixed rushing attack. They move the ball around the backfield a little bit more, head to the sidelines a little bit more aggressively than Green Bay does. So even though they are both, performing not so great, they are doing it in different ways. So
there are lots of different ways to be bad.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens in that. And the big difference between the teams is the defense. By DVOA, Steelers are 7th overall, while Green Bay's 22nd. So these DVOA numbers are from FTNFantasy.com, sort of the current home for DVOA. The Steelers are 7th against the pass, and Green Bay's only 25th. So this is interesting. And the Steelers are not so good against the run. They're only 16th against the run, and Green Bay's 19th. So Green Bay has managed to turn their defense on its head and be better against the run than they are against the pass now, which is really kind of...
Yeah, it's baffling after seeing last year getting obliterated by the Eagles, giving up record numbers to Jalen Hurts. So it's at least comforting seeing them move towards the middle of the pack on that. But I still don't feel good. Like it's not good enough where I feel confident. It's just I no longer feel a little sickly looking at it.
Right. The question we'll find out, is it just the luck of the schedule or not?
Right.
Something that will eventually become self-evident.
Yeah.
So moving on to our more sort of deeper analysis of the teams and how they match up. Get on to our general thoughts of the game, and to the section that Tommy thinks I always have trouble figuring out anything nice to say about the other team. So it's the hey now play nice. He thinks I'm just like, I don't know, playground bully.
So like, I think it's a lot easier.
I'm Mo looking for like Calvin out of the playground somewhere. If you guys know that Calvin Hobbes reference.
Yeah, I in the early weeks when you were playing against the Bears, it was a little harder to work this segment. But this, there's some parts of this team that we're kind of afraid of. So I think you didn't have as much trouble this time coming up with ideas.
Right. We can just say that the teams that the teams were so bad that we didn't have to. It was hard to find something nice to say about it. But why don't you go first, Eli, about for this section what you think are something the Steelers are good at.
Sure. So one of the things that I think the Steelers have excelled at in their offense that is a little shaky is they're getting the ball to Jaylen Warren and giving him opportunities to make plays from the backfield, but very efficiently. So he's making a lot of backfield receptions and then getting 7 or so yards per reception, even on an average depth of target of negative 1.3 yards. So he's been a consistent checkdown option for Kenny Pickett. With Pat Fryermuth has been out for a couple weeks, but Jalen Warren still getting the ball, and those short-ish yardage gains they need, he's been able to do it pretty consistently in the air. It's like not quite Alvin Kamara-esque, but he is making those kind of receiving plays. So from Paul Brettel on Packers Wire, he says that most of Warren's pass catching opportunities have come out of the backfield, where he made a number of splash plays, ranking 10th among all running backs in receiving yards and 5th in yards after the catch. His draft profile talked a lot about how he was kind of hard to tackle and would move well in that regard. So we will want the Packers tackling to be on point if they're pitching the ball out to Warren on inside, outside. He's all over the place. So if you look at the heat map of where Jalen Warren has been getting the ball, it's everywhere. Slightly favored on the right side, but he's all over the place. So that's Kenny Pickett's like safety blanket on like late downs is get the ball to Jalen Warren. He's getting yards very efficiently.
Yeah, and relying on the Packers tackling efficiency can be kind of a fraught prospect.
Right.
So we'll see, though. I think they've been a little better than that, and their inside linebackers have been actually quite good this year. So hopefully for that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And a lot of people felt like Warren has been a more efficient back than Najee Harris for a couple of years now. But I think because of his size, there's always this thing that they won't just give him the full-time work, even though he's pretty solidly built, and is actually, I think, holds up decently in pass pro as well. He's a pretty tough running back.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I kind of just stuck to the low-hanging fruit of the Steelers defense. So as you mentioned before, they're like 7th in the league in a number of metrics, and a lot of that I feel like is built on their pass rush. So in addition to being in the top 10 by DVOA, they're also in the top 10 by expected points added per play on defense, including being 9th in per dropback per pass play. The pass rush is really what does it for them too. Their adjusted sack rate by DVOA is ranked 6th in the NFL, and they're also 6th in pass rush per PFF grade. So basically, anywhere you look, the numbers are in agreement. Sometimes different sources have different opinions on a team's quality, but everybody knows, like, yeah, this is a team that has a good pass rush, and a lot of it is driven by T.J. Watt, though their other edge rusher, Highsmith,
Yes. Yeah.
is also very good. He'd probably get more attention if he wasn't playing next to a potential, defensive player of the year candidate in Watt. If you don't believe in that half sacks are a thing, then Watt is tied for the league lead with 10 sacks, and he's 8th in PFF's pass rush grade and 9th in total pressures with 29. And Highsmith is 17th in the pass rush grade and he has 5 sacks of his own and is 14th in pressures with 38. So together they got, as a duo, they're among the league leaders and teammates with pressures and sacks.
I think it's important that you bring up Highsmith here because like last week we had a pretty scary matchup in Aaron Donald, but that was somewhat well contained, all things considered. But I think the dual threat, and especially how aggressively TJ Watt is standing on the edge, he's looking to make that play every time. And if you also have to deal with another competent rusher in Highsmith, it makes it a lot more difficult, especially if you're running low on personnel due to injury.
Yeah, the other thing that's interesting is so he did a pretty good job on Donald, who's lining up inside, and had a couple games basically blown up by edge rushers, Max Crosby and Aiden Hutchinson, the Lions and the Raiders. even though the general consensus is our tackles are better than our interior linemen. So figure out what that means, because I don't know if it means. I don't know what it means. Then another,
So Aaron Donald has like a huge double team percentage, but like also the Rams have at this point traded away so many players that he's kind of a one man army on their
it could be
line.
that they just have very little around them at this. That makes it a little bit easier because
Yeah,
he is
I don't
actually
think they have
still
anyone else in like the top 30 by PFF for uh, D line
yeah.
pressure.
But speaking of D line for the Steelers, they're basically getting I think their best D lineman back in Cam Hayward. He played week one, missed like the next what 6 7 weeks, and then started playing last week. So keep an eye on him as well. I think it looks like he's basically cleared, even though he was limited for the week and even had a DNP, but then didn't have a designation on the final injury report. So some of these things always this section often leads in pretty dovetails pretty neatly with the next, and what we're nervous about. What are some of the vulnerabilities the Packers might have in this specific matchup that make you nervous? You wanna take that first?
Sure. So the main thing I'm worried in, like this is a little generic, but is drive killing penalties, especially in like the first quarter. So with the Steelers having such a strong pass defense and specifically pass rush, man, pass rush is one that I'm not going to be able to say consistently.
Just trying to say like
Pass
pass
rush.
rush win rate,
Yeah, there we
pass
go.
block win rate.
But with how low of a completion rate they allow, it makes it a lot more difficult to overcome the like larger yardages you need. Like it's
Yeah,
like when you can't
we
consistently make the plays, it makes it harder
yeah.
to chip away at the yardages you lose from those penalties. So
Eh,
if you're against a defense that either allows you to consistently get those 6 or 7 yard plays, you're going to be okay. But that is not what this Steelers defense is allowing, at least in the passing game. It's a little more lenient in the run, but you don't want to be relying on running for 15 or 20 yards for a set of downs.
yeah, and we've not had a good record this year of um, success when we get behind the chains.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be in a must pass situation. We'd like to avoid as many of those must pass situations as possible in this game. So
Yes.
just like draw a bullseye on Love's back. Just turn that zero in the number 10 into a little target.
Yeah. So I guess uh, penalties and sacks are both things we would very much like to avoid.
Yes, and
I
sometimes they
don't
can go
see
hand in
us.
hand. Hand in hand. We'll get
Yeah.
a couple of false starts and other procedural penalties that should never happen for any reason, and
Yep.
then be facing second and first and 10, and first and 15, second and 20, and then yeah, and we've had a bunch of drive killing penalties so far, and this hopefully it's getting better. I feel like the impression is getting a little better.
It
Um,
felt better last week. I didn't really look into the stats for just last game, but season wide we have almost half of our penalties in the first quarter, and we have
isn't that bad?
66% in the first half. So
Almost half in the first quarter. Well, that kind of tracks with our scoring prowess in the
right.
first quarter. These go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Um,
So if we can stay disciplined, maybe we won't have to rely on late game frantic passing in the second half, and that could help us as well.
yeah, and so what I have is basically I'm just keep hammering home the same topic essentially. So I'm worried about is the Packers left tackle situation against the Steelers pass rush, whether it's Josh Nyman or Rasheed Walker, and maybe they won't they won't have a choice. We'll see. The Packers are only 20th in adjusted sack rate, DVOA adjusted sack rate per FTN fantasy, and both Nyman and Walker are graded as above average in PFF pass block grade. Though they've had some struggles, and each have given up sacks and pressures. So some of that the PFF grades may be inflated by some easy matchups as opposed to when they've had some tougher matchups. And the second thing I'm worried about is who's going to be lining up at cornerback for this game. What in the world is going to be happening? You know, beginning of the year, we're talking about, we've got like one of the deepest corner groups in the whole league. We got Jair and we got Rasul, and Stokes is going to come back, and the rookie Carrington Valentine looks amazing in camp. And now, if Jair's shoulder keeps him from playing, then our top two outside corners seem like they're going to be, Valentine and Valentine, but both playing outside. A rookie and, an undrafted, mostly practice squad player for his career.
If Jair is healthy, do you think they'll mostly play Carrington Valentine, who had kind of a hot week last week? He was graded pretty well. He blanketed Puka Nakua, and I think he was targeted 8 times and gave up either 1 or 2 catches.
Yeah, Valentine played really well, and I think he's definitely the preferred player there on one of the corners. And that he might come out for a little bit of rest here and there, but I think they're going to keep him on the field as much as possible. But if not, their outside corners seem to be Valentine and Valentine. And they're going up against the Steelers' top 2 receivers, Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. They both primarily line up outside. Neither one really does that much in the slot. And per PFF grade,
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it's like Pickens is elite at everything deep, so everything beyond 10 yards. So from 10 to 20, his grade is elite. From 20 and beyond, his grade is elite. Well, Johnson's kind of the reverse. He's elite at everything under 20. 0 to 10, he's got an elite grade. At 10 to 20, he's got an elite grade, but not as good over 20. So they're both going to be there. And then if Jair doesn't play, so Keyshawn will be in the slot. I don't think they're going to move him outside. I don't think they want to do that. But after Valentine and Valentine, their next corner might be Robert Rochelle, and who LaFleur mentioned, who they just signed a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, that would be pretty dire. And I'm afraid that George Pickens is going to try and have a get right game against us. So he's been a little grumpy over in Pittsburgh.
He's been the squeaky wheel, begging for some targets. We'll see if Tallman is willing to appease that or send him tell him to take a hike.
Yeah, I mean,
I hope Tomlin tells him to take a hike.
Tomlin is always pretty diplomatic, and he's pretty good at handling the media. But when somebody asks him, like, what do you think of George Pickens, making these tweets, he's like, this isn't a reality show. Like, I don't care. And if I do care, I'm happy because, like, he's, it means he's a competitor and he wants to, get targets and do well. So,
you don't really find out how much of a problem those Steelers receivers are until they get sent to another team. Like Exhibit A, Antonio Brown, Exhibit B, Chase Claypool.
Yeah.
So caveat emptor if anybody's trading for George Pickens in the near future.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to get albatrossed.
So we've kind of gone over the Steelers, what looks good from their perspective. And, we're not here just for that. We might pretend to be realists, but let's go on to where we think the Packers have the strengths here and what the exploitable weaknesses of the Steelers
are. Sure. So the Steelers are only allowing a 59.6% completion percent for passes, which is the 3rd best in the league. However, they are dead last in allowed yards per completion and 8th worst in allowed yards per attempt. So this means if the ball is, getting out and on target, they're usually getting some yards out of it. So like they're giving up like 200 more yards than the Saints with a pretty much identical allowed completion percentage. They're Cornerbacks right now are the rookie Joey Porter Jr., who is doing very well. He's ranked 25th among quarterbacks by PFF. But their other starting corner is Patrick Peterson, who's all the way down at 91st. He's seen a little bit of a fall from grace. So it's a little imbalanced right now for their pass coverage, and since we don't have like a strict clear number one receiver for them to stick Joey Porter Jr. on, we might be able to take advantage of that a little bit more than like the Titans last year got pretty hard shut down because Joey Porter was on DeAndre Hopkins and they didn't really have a good second option.
Yeah, so Porter's looked good. He's been a quality pick for them.
Yeah.
But their other cornerbacks are basically all graded poorly in coverage.
Yeah. Do you want to go with one of yours?
I could go on. Yeah, I'll do one of mine. So the Steel. So we all know as Packer fans, the first halves have been abysmal. Borderline unwatchable on offense.
Mm-hmm.
However,
Yep.
the Steelers' first half offense by EPA per play is even worse than the Packers. Their EPA per dropback, so pass plays, is about the same as Green Bay, but their expected points added per rush is even worse than the Packers. And that, you remember some of those Packers plays where they have plays where they forget to block somebody and just leave the nose tackle open to come into the backfield. And yet the Steelers are worse. And only the Giants and the Jets are worse in first half offense than the Steelers. That's company you do not want to be named in on offense. So this is a chance for the Packers to get an opponent in obvious passing downs, which is something that the Packers defense has kind of been designed for a while. Is that instead of getting just gashed in the run over and over again, if they can. They sort of built a rush the passer, though. Let's see how that goes, especially with under the third string cornerbacks. But so the first half could be like 3-0 or 0-0 in this game.
Yeah, I almost had a section in this about punting because I figured that might be such a big part of the game in the first half, but I wasn't able to find any meaningful punting statistics. So I'll have to save that for a different matchup.
Nothing really to separate them in punting quality.
Daniel Whelan is graded better by PFF, but I cannot for the life of me figure out why. They're almost statistically identical otherwise.
Maybe it's time for and then the Packers were kind of mixing up there. Who does the returning? Sometimes Keyshawn, sometimes Nixon, and sometimes Jane Reed.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe one of them, and they've each had some decent returns. So maybe one of them will break one this time.
Yep. The other thing I wanted to talk about is how immobile Kenny Pickett is. So he isn't graded poorly as a runner. He's 17th by PFF, but he just doesn't really do it. So he averages less than 1 yard per carry. So he's not a huge run
amazing
threat. Right?
You know what that means? I mean, what it sounds like to be less than 1 yard is just like he must almost never run. And he just barely gets far enough so it doesn't count as a sack.
Right. So, like, if you think about a yard,
it's by a half a yard, and it's not a sack.
Kenny Pickett is theoretically 2 yards tall. So if he falls forward, that's 2 yards, and he's not even meeting that. So we don't need to worry about him getting away on his feet. So hopefully that frees up some of the Packers' resources to deal with Deontay Johnson, Jalen Warren, and George Pickens if they don't have to worry about Kenny Pickett isn't a flight risk.
Right. So it's not like one of those games where you just can't play man coverage because the quarterback is going to be running downfield right behind you.
Right. Exactly.
You turn your back on the line of scrimmage. It shouldn't be a problem with Kenny Pickett. Didn't realize he was had just that little running. Watch, he was going to go off for like 80 yards this game. So speaking of Kenny Pickett, and kind of related to what I had said about the first half, I'll pile on some more. Um, per RBSDM, um, is among QBs with more than 100 plays. He's 34th in composite EPA per play plus completion percentage over expected per play in the league, only ahead of Zach Wilson and PJ Walker. He is, in fact, so low in the first that the Colts, Giants, and Bears all have two QBs with better ratings than his. But
So
in the
if you did expand that chart out to quarterbacks who have only played 40 snaps, you will see Brett Rippon like way farther over than Kenny
way down
Pickett.
on the tail.
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't actually go down to see. I was trying to just get players with a big enough sample size of offensive plays, but yeah, Rippon he's way out on the tail.
Yeah.
Is he by himself down there in the
He's
corner of
pretty
that?
close to by
If you do the
himself.
graph
Yeah.
of the CPOE per play and EPA per play, is he like down way down in that corner by himself in the
Correct.
in the zone you don't want to be?
Exactly.
Um, but one thing that's strange, in the fourth quarter, he's weirdly the second best in the league, only behind Josh Allen.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he has this really great fourth quarter, and they talk about how the Steelers, even though they struggle on offense a lot of game, they come through in winning time. Um, Now, Love for comparison is 20th overall, so not as bad as Pickett, and he moves up to in the second half to um, for the whole second half to second in the league behind Josh Allen again, and for the whole second half, Pickett is eighth. It's the fourth
Okay.
quarter where he's really raising that average up to second.
Got it.
Per PFF, Pickett's turnover worthy play percentage is the 12th lowest in the league. So not bad at taking care of the ball, but his on target throw percentage is 34th in the league. It's about the same as Love's with his on target percentage according to PFF. But that's with an average depth of target of only 7.1, which is the 25th shortest, compared to Love's average depth of target of 8.5, which is the sixth highest. So they're having about the similar depth of accuracy on target throw percentage, but Love is throwing it further downfield.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett has 60 throws to Jalen Warren with an ADOT of negative 1.3, so that's dragging that average
down big time. That's a large volume too.
Yes,
so I don't think
he's getting numbers.
So I don't think that's going to be like just a couple plays really affecting your average, and you should be looking at the median instead. It's still going to be low.
I'd be curious to see what it is separated out for only receivers, but that wasn't something I looked into. I looked at the heat map for where George Pickens and Deontay Johnson are, and it's all beyond the line of scrimmage, but it's pretty balanced. Relative to side of the field at least, and then but you can see that they're. Deontay Johnson is one band like 10 yards out, and then Pickens is the next band.
Pickens has kind of made his hay as a pro with the downfield targets and contested catches.
Yeah, he wants highlight reel eligible things only.
Yeah, he wants to moss somebody. I'm here for the mossing.
Yeah,
and the replays. So those were the things that I had in ways that the Steelers have weaknesses, and so then from there we'll go to how would we like the Packers to approach the game in terms of specific strategies. I could go first. Do you want to go first?
Go ahead.
So, I'll start with I want them to make quick passes, maybe on slants to try to negate the impact of the pass rush. The Steelers' primary slot defenders are former Packer Shannon Sullivan and Minka Fitzpatrick, who's out, and Patrick Peterson. So they've taken the most snaps in the slot on defense for the Steelers. And all of them have below average coverage grades by PFF. So I think this is an area of the field where the Packers can take advantage. And, for them, Reed lines up the most in the slot, so it could be a big day for him. And I think if they can get rid of the ball quickly, it may have some help them getting avoiding some of the falling by the chains because of sacks and pressures.
Hmm.
And and I think some of those sacks that they've been giving up lately, or maybe all season, are love holding the ball too long. So if they get try to design quick hitters, maybe it'll help.
Right, and they should be able to work those in if they know they're not dealing with uh, hard blanketing people in the slot and in those medium yardage scenarios.
Yeah, I think there's going to be maybe some space to find some openings there.
Hmm.
What did you have?
I'm. We've sort of touched on this a little bit in the other segments, but I'm hoping the Packers don't lose the game in the first quarter. So with the Steelers, with their slow and steady approach to offense, and by that I mean they're not really scoring much and not getting many yards. We if we don't make mistakes, if we don't turn over the ball, the Packers they have the offensive capabilities to perform well in this game. Avoiding the early penalties, early turnovers. This is going to be a game where I'll be
Missed blocking assignments, which seemed
yep.
better last game.
Yeah. If they're this is a game where I'll be happy even if they're making consistent field goals. I'll feel good about that. In some matchups, if the Packers get a field goal, I'm like, oh, we're not coming back from that. But that's not going to be the case here. They
Yeah,
can just
this is
play like smart, consistent offense, and that'll be enough to get the job done.
yeah. Steelers have been living a lot on field goals. I think this is
Yep.
not like trading field goals for touchdowns with the Dolphins or something.
No. No. The field goal for field goal is gonna be fine for the most part.
Another thing that I'd like to see them do is kind of schematically is establish Aaron Jones early again, like they did last game. It doesn't always have to be like success on every play. It just needs to be good enough that they can stay on schedule and have both the run and the pass plays as available options,
Hmm.
so that the defense has to respect them and can't just like pin their ears back and rush full into the quarterback. Um, as mentioned, I mean, before, the Steelers' run defense is not as good as their pass defense by DVOA. 16th in the league, by PFF is 18th in the league, so they agree pretty well. And their adjusted line yards on defense is actually really poor by DVOA. It's 27th in the league, so that's basically how much of the run stopping um, is can be attributed to the defensive front.
Hmm.
So I think there's ability for the Packers to um, have some success running, and I think it'll maybe also help them keep keep Love upright and be able to complete some passes.
Yep.
So then we can go on to don't take your eye off that guy, and this is actually what I have in here is very closely related, so I could jump in
Yeah. Go ahead.
um,
Continue.
next because it's almost the same. So I'm just continuing the same topic, breaking the paragraphs between sections on the outline here. But Cam Hayward is playing. So first time this says if Cam Hayward plays, watch for the run blocking battle between him and the Green Bay interior offensive line. He is lined up in the B gap over half the time, which would put him against Jenkins or Runyon, if Runyon even plays. Or it could be like Jenkins or Ryan, or maybe it could be Ryan and Runyon and Jenkins is left tackle because they don't have anybody else to play with tackles. There's all kinds of things that can be happening here. Last year, Hayward was sixth in PFF grade on run defense amongst defensive linemen. So he doesn't have that many snaps yet this year. And 2 years ago, he led all defensive linemen in run defense grade. Um, so he's missed a lot this year, and so maybe that's one of the reasons why the Steelers have not been as good in run defense. They were 10th best last year, as opposed to being 18th best this year. Um, and I really worry if some, the the Packers, not even this year, but for a while now, when the run defense just gets stuffed and they have trouble running up the middle or getting, which, earlier this year and other years, feels like the whole offense just bogs down and they can't
And
get
it
anything
feels
done.
like they keep trying it too. So I was looking earlier to see where Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon run, and it's a lot of in the middle. Not a single end around, no jet sweeps, none of that for sure.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah,
not a single one, but it's just a lot at the um, you know middle left, middle right, and that's the vast majority of it.
yeah.
And when it
And so
doesn't
what?
work, it really looks like it doesn't work, and it's hard to understand as a bystander why they're trying it again, because
Yep. Sometimes
I
we keep
don't know
trying,
what
and
they're
there's like,
expecting to be different is.
and so we get like no push by the offensive line, and there's just nowhere
Right.
to go. Just run
Yeah.
into the backs of blockers or right into the defenders.
Exactly.
Which one reason I kind of liked what Ryan was doing in the last game, and like to see him get some more chances.
Hmm.
It was nice actually last game. And speaking of end arounds, Tommy and I've talked a little bit how like they first few weeks of the season they try like every one of those seemed to be a drive killer, like a reverse or a jet sweep or something, and just tackle somebody for an 8-yard loss. But we had a successful one last week for Jaden Reed went
Yes.
going up.
Yeah.
So it's like, ooh, it worked.
Yeah. I
So
like those plays. I don't know what their league wide success rate is, but to me it always it feels like there's at least a chance, especially if you're going up against a defense that's stifled you a little bit. So
yeah,
maybe we'll
especially get
see
him
a
to
little
over
bit of
pursue.
that creativity if we run into trouble tomorrow or
But for the love
Sunday.
of God, please give the ball to somebody with some speed.
Yes.
We've seen the Packers do that before, and like, how did you think in any world that like Alan Lazard was going to be able to get around the corner on that play, for example?
Right. Yeah.
Just a
Or
random example. I don't know what makes that one pop into my head. Do you have anybody that you
so
want to keep
the
an eye on?
Yeah, I had two. I had Jalen Warren, just because you guys are always talking about that Kamara performance, and I'm always on the lookout for the next person who's going
The
to do it
next,
to us. So
so we
who's
can
going to have
stop.
their breakout game? So
Don't you
I
hate it when you're watching your team and they seem to turn um, basic average players into stars? It's like, oh
yeah,
yeah, this guy looks like an all pro now.
yeah. Everyone touched the Space Jam basketball before they played against us. So yeah, I'm hoping Jalen Warren doesn't become the clear RB1 in this game specifically. And then my other eye is on whoever the Packers wide receiver 2 ends up being on the day. So they've been spreading the ball around fairly well. It kind of could be anyone, but whoever Joey Porter Jr. is not covering is they could have an exciting day, since the Steelers secondary is kind of weak.
It's
So
a big drop off. Yeah, could be Wicks, could be Reed,
yep.
could be Watson. Whoever's getting the second most. I mean, people think of the Watson's wide receiver one, but we maybe just think about who's going to get the second most targets in this game, or who's not going to be covered by Porter.
Yep.
I almost
Yeah.
said
So I
Pickett. It's like, wait, this is a different name that starts with a P. I don't think Kenny Pickett's going to be out there covering anybody. I wish
yeah,
he
they
would.
crunch.
Yep, yeah, he might get. They might target him. You might even throw him the ball like longest yard style. If you had a quarterback in there on defense.
That would be something. That'll be Taysom Hill's next job, I'm sure.
He'll play middle linebacker. Or
Yeah.
you mean if they or the guy to hit him?
Doesn't matter. Either one. Uh,
Um, so then I have a little we have a little overtime. Anything we haven't talked about yet? We wanted to discuss that we didn't manage to shoehorn into any of the other categories.
Yeah, so I was looking to talk about quarterback performance under pressure specifically. So with how much we've been talking about the uh, pass rush that we're going to be dealing with, I figured we should talk a little bit about how Jordan Love has been doing in those pressured situations, and it's not great. The graded fairly poorly, and so Jordan Love's completion rate generally sits at 64.5%. But when he's under pressure, it drops all the way down to 43.3%, which is not going to be great. So,
That's precipitous.
yeah. Um, so Kenny Pickett's drop, he's uh, been pressured on 40.6% of
That's
snaps,
a crazy high number.
but it doesn't really affect him that much. So this Kenny Pickett, when they're driving well, he actually has a pretty good tempo and pretty good time to throw. So his completion rate is regularly 66.2, and when pressured, only drops to 52.4. So he's still connecting on passes half the time, and they're negative 1.8 yard passes to Jalen Warren, but it's still a completion, and in quick throw situations, Kenny Pickett is averaging 6% higher completion rate and 1.6 more yards per attempt than Jordan Love.
Yeah, kind of related to that. I was looking for something similar to see what would come out of it, and I noticed that for PFF, Pickett's, like everybody's grade, it comes down under pressure, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't come down as much as on average. So his PFF grade, when kept clean, I forget how low it is in terms of its ranking in the league, but his PFF grade under pressure, he actually moved up the ranking. Um, so his grade got worse, but it went down like, let's just say, to pull a number out of where,
Mm-hmm.
went down 10 points, while on average people go down like 15 points or more. So he actually, instead of being like 25th in the league, he was like 16th or something. He actually
Right.
did relatively better. Not that he got better, but compared to his peers, compared to the rest of the quarterbacks on average. Um, for me, I'm jumping on a trend with a very small sample size, and we're going to ride this thing until you know, I fall flat on my face. Since week
We'll
five,
get to n equals 30 eventually. It'll happen.
it'll happen. Since week five, just the last four games, Green Bay is eighth in rushing EPA per play on defense, after being 27th in the league over the first four games. And they've given up 3.3 yards per carry or less in three of the last four games. So the outlier being when they got kind of trucked by the Broncos. If they can shut down the Steelers' run game, it can make it easier overall on defense, make them one-dimensional, and then be
Mm-hmm.
able to take care of the rest of the Steelers' really not very good offense. So hopefully the Packers will actually figure this out, and it will continue and not just be like a 3-game blip on the radar.
Right.
But it could blow up in my face. We'll see. Um, so, bottom line, um, what do the Steelers have to do to win?
I think if the Packers get behind early and have the game errors that they've been making when behind, the Steelers' offense really isn't going to have to do anything, and they'll be able to win in that way.
Yeah, for me, it was just if TJ Watt just destroys the offensive game plan, a la what Max Crosby did, both to the run and pass game, when the Packers played the Raiders earlier this year. If it's another repeat of that, then it could be a long day for the Packers offense. They just won't be able to get anything done. In which case, they might end up losing, 9-3.
Yeah.
It's gonna, um, on the other hand, the Packers win if blank. And for me,
Go ahead.
I,
Sorry.
I think if they could just win the turnover battle, as mentioned above, the Steelers have been outgained on the year and outscored, but are one of the league leaders in turnover differential. So far, the Steelers have not won a single game without winning the turnover battle this year. Week 2 versus the Browns, +2 on turnovers, win by only 4 points. Week 3 against the Raiders, +3 in turnovers and only win by 5. Week 5 against the Ravens, +2 on turnovers and win by 7. Week 7 against the Rams, +1 in turnovers, win by 7. And Week 9 against the Titans, +1 on turnovers, win by 4. In their 3 losses, they lost the turnover battle by 1 twice, and they managed to win the turnover battle against the Jags and still lost. So the Packers, on the other hand, they managed to win twice while losing, or without winning the turnover battle. So I think if they just don't turn the ball over or don't lose it, I think they got a pretty good chance. But that has been the Steelers' defense so far this year, rescuing their offense.
Yep. And my Packers win if touches a little bit on the defense rescuing their offense. So if the Steelers defense can't prevent the Packers from playing a balanced game, I think the Packers have a shot. If the Packers always have offensive options, they'll have a lot more opportunities this game if they can mix it up between passing and running, and not let the Steelers just shut down the passing game while ahead. I think the Packers have a shot.
Mm-hmm. And
which
some
leads
of that
me
may
to
also
my score
help.
prediction. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say some of that may actually help with the turnover problem as well. Though they managed to fumble the ball last week instead of throwing interceptions.
Yeah, got creative with that one. Is one of the only
times
the ground has caused a fumble.
Tavian Wicks' fumble. I'm gonna say that was creative. You managed to. They say the ground can't cause a fumble, but not it can sometimes if you manage to fall down and fumble it without being touched.
Yep. Baffling. Right into somebody's hands.
It gets the sideline too. It's like, how did that not go out of bounds or touch the paint or nothing?
Yeah.
So, but score prediction.
So I think the Steelers are going to win 20-10. I think that at least 10 of those points are going to come from extremely short fields. I think there's going to be a short field touchdown and a short field goal after inopportune turnovers.
I think for the Steelers to get to 20 points, it's going to have to.
Yeah.
I have a closer but also low scoring game. What did I say? The over under was like 39 points.
I think so. I don't think there's a chance.
That's shocking. I have the Steelers winning this game 17-13, and frankly, my optimism for the score getting that high is not very high.
Yeah, the over under has an implied score of 21-18, which I think is generous and also difficult to attain. But ignoring
we're
that,
we're gonna have 6 field goals.
Yeah.
And the Steelers will have a defensive touchdown, a safety, and 4 field goals.
Yep.
Something
there we go.
That's gonna be the day. It's gonna be beautiful football. But that wraps it up, listeners. So if you're looking where to find us, you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And we also tweet out any news or updates we find interesting on Twitter, the artist formerly known as Twitter. And so we'll be continuing to talk about this game, and we'll talk about it afterwards, and just any updates that happen before the game. We'll send out some messages. But until next time, go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.